It's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, here today to talk to you about the dance of the four elemental serpents from the Chilean band Hellish. And this record is coming off of Dying Victims Productions. This is the third album from these blackened thrashers. And blackened thrash, not an uncommon subgenre. Lots of bands create fusions of these two different metal approaches. And there's been a lot of great releases, even in very recent memory, of albums that could be called blackened thrash. But the recipe for blackened thrash can vary as different bands interpret it and determine the right amount of each of the two genres to throw into the mix. Hellish, the way that Hellish comes at blackened thrash is definitely to lay it heavy on the thrash. While there is definitely a demonic offering of black metal here, and you definitely get that with this band's fixation on occultic imagery, it kind of stands second to the sheer aggression and the foot on the pedal, all gas, all go, thrash metal nastiness here. And this album is just really intense, packed to the brim with propulsive energy that comes out in a very multi-dimensional delivery. On the first track here, the ancient entity of the darkest light, things get going with these very frosty riffs that hold up a bass solo here that is super captivating. And really the bass here is used in really cool ways. It has such a unique presence and is often kind of seen as the lead instrument in a lot of passages here, which gives this album a very unique muddiness that I think makes the album stand out amongst the lot of thrash and black metal and blackened thrash albums. The drums have this cool blend of that punkish aggression, but also you get that what I described as this ritualistic riding the snare thing that if you listen to a lot of black metal, I think you'll know what I'm trying to describe. And the drummer does an interesting combination of both those approaches simultaneously. You get these fast, erratic guitar lines that just race all over the place on this guitar, and it's really fun to try to follow along with. With the vocals, you get these vampiric howls into the night. And that's kind of where a lot of the blackened allure on this album, I feel, comes from. In a lot of places here, on Black Stones, there's this combination of violent rolling attacks from the guitars. The drums do this kind of boomeranging thing on the snares and the toms There's these dizzying runs from the bass, and that all comes together to create for thrash listeners, a familiar ferocity, but a very unusual and unorthodox and very interesting execution in delivering that intensity. There's a guitar solo here, not surprising, and it's put together with a lot of impressive hammer-on works. You got some cool bends, you got the gamut, but it also kind of demands attention and stands out with its sense of melodicism as well, which is really nice that it works so well in conjunction with everything else on this record. Violent, Bloody, and Cold is an interesting cut here. It's more of a mid-paced groove to start with. There's a lot of atmosphere thrown in, and a lot of that comes in with these very grim and hazy arpeggios. But the track sort of builds in intensity, and it gets faster and more textured as it goes on until it reaches its full force climax. And somehow this track works really well on this album and doesn't slow down Hellish's momentum in any sort of way. So hats off to that. On Goddess Death, we get some more cool melodic makeup in the riffcraft here. And also the guitars do and have this bit more of a harmonic presence. It's as if the guitars and the bass are coming at somewhat staggered lines that create this chordal attack and this kind of counterpointing thing. And it's really cool and satisfying to my ear. And it's just kind of an interesting way of composing the riffs here. I love just how unhinged the drums are. Just absolutely abusing the snare, flying all over the hi-hat and the kick pedal. It just feels like you feel it like it's about to snap in half, but it never does. There is a guitar lead in a couple places here where I don't know. I can't really pinpoint what's going on with the effects pedals here. It's such an alien sound that the guitar makes, but it's also very musical and very cool, and I like it quite a bit. On Nocturnal Trudge, I think the blackened, the black metal sound comes out a lot here. You get some more tremolo like riffs that kind of push this track forward and also carry some really nasty and tortured shrieks from the vocalist. But the bass, how the bass kind of plays in complement to that, gives it its very thrashy punch. And speaking of the bass, on this track, there's this like dueling lead where the guitar and the bass kind of duet in this kind of solo passage, and they're kind of fighting each other out, and it's really awesome and really different and creates such a unique feeling and experience that not a lot of bands really conjure. It's one of the cooler moments on this record, in my opinion. Search of the Sands. The band's musicianship is off the charts here. You get these like neoclassical inspired runs that kind of really take prominence here. Just these complex timing changes throughout, these very technical solos, but somehow with that heightened kind of high brownness that somehow they incorporate never feels subdued. There is still a very heavy, very nasty thrashiness that is fully maintained in this track. The last track here, well, the last track before the instrumental outro here. This track is fast. And there's a bit of a progginess here that rapidly changes within tonality and timing and speeds and textures, and you get some real virtuosic but still very visceral instrumental runs. It's such a dynamically rich track. And then things end with the title piece. It's an instrumental, and it's an instrumental that lets all of the musicians kind of just show off. They kind of take turns with one another and kind of communicate with one another and kind of rotate who's at the front, and they just all play the shit out of their instruments. And it's a very bold way to end this record on. Listening to this record, I find myself, and I think there's a lot of calls to and reminiscence of some of that early kind of proto-black sounds. I get a lot of influences from like Sarcophago and Sodom, but still this is also in the same way a very contemporary sounding album. And this is an album that I feel, and if you've given this a listen and it hasn't hit yet, listen again because I'm about to explain why. This is an album that I think it's better over time with repeat listens because there's kind of a lot of layers to it. The first time you listen to this, at least in my experience, you're gonna get hit by the loads of raw aggression. There's so much of that here to experience. And if that is what all you want, you might not have to dig deeper into this record. But that aggression is only half the appeal here. Because as you dig deeper, more just fine and unique and explorative and very interesting detail starts to pop out at you and make itself known. And it becomes more and more of a very complex listen as you go on, while maintaining that simple primalness at the forefront. And that makes this super exciting for me. And those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed this review, consider hitting that like button. It really helps to get the video out there. If you'd be so kind and you enjoy what I do and want to be notified of my next videos, it would mean the world to me if you would consider subscribing. Leave a comment. I love interacting with those, and I'm seeing them more often, and it makes me really happy, and it's really fun for me. I have a Twitter you can follow. The link to that is in the bio of this YouTube channel. Please keep it metal. My name's Maddie. She, her, aka Beaver Mosh. Signing off.